Wow. It's been 6 months since I last made and posted a YouTube video, but I'm back now. I have a new tablet and energy, and I'm motivated. Anyway, hello, I'm Mirror Ghosty, and in this video, I'm redesigning Izuku Midoriya as if he were my own character. I'll do a quick run through about what I changed, why, and a little bit of my influences, and then I'm just going to ramble about the things I would then change in My Hero Academia, stemming off from the things I changed in Izuku. So firstly, there's a lot I already like about Izuku and his design. I love that he's a socially awkward, dorky nerd who is very compassionate and analytical. I love how his nerdiness reflects in the bunny-esque ears that are based off of the hair bits of All Might. I love his red shoes and belt with the pouches. I love the recent addition of the scarf to his costume. I love the braces and supports that are included in his costume to indicate him trying to minimize One For All's harm to him. After all of that, though, I kind of hate, or I guess dislike, everything else about his costume. The green color, the baggy jumpsuit, the weird shapes of his leg gear, his gloves. I cannot fully articulate everything I hate about his gloves. Now, for my design, the first thing I did was change the colors. So now it's black, dark gray, and bright red. After that change, I wanted to add more bunny to his costume and drew inspiration from Season 1's design of Ruby. So that also made me consider some Little Red Riding Hood inspiration into his design, if you will. I made the costume 3 pieces, top, bottom, and thigh highs. I know that sounds kind of weird. I made his red shoes red and black boots. I made his pants into shorts, and his top more like a hoodie. At that point, I went 2 directions with the design. In one, I raised the belt to his waist, added leg straps, ended his sleeves at his elbows, and gave him fingerless glove arm warmers. And because of his Little Red Riding Hood influence, I gave him a red hood attached with a metal ring that he could easily take off if anyone ever tried to use that against him in a fight. For the second design, he still has a hood, a slightly different attachment ring, and long sleeves that fall past his hands. I had this idea of him having like knives hidden on his arms that he can fling out and surprise people with. I thought that was cool. As for this design's belt, it is at his hips and it only has 1 leg strap and additional pockets. For both designs, to replace the half mask that he is given, I gave him a full mask because I thought it would make sense to protect his eyes as well, and it's designed to look like a bunny. It's got giant hollow eyes, so like it can look very cute or very intimidating. It depends on the context. As for how the story changes, the beginning is basically the same. He's a powerless kid in a superpowered society. He wants to be a hero. He's bullied by Bakugo and his classmates, and he's belittled and ignored by his teachers. He gets to meet All Might and gets to ask if he can be a hero, and he says no. He then ends up still saving Bakugo, which it's more like he tries while all the heroes are just standing there like they can't do anything. All Might still saves them, and still ends up telling Izuku, yes, you can be a hero with my power. After that, Izuku still gets the same training as before. As for the entrance exam, Izuku has more moments trying to use One For All, but getting sidetracked helping others' kids in their fights, which all culminates in him finally using One For All against the 0-pointer to save Uraraka, and this still breaks all of his bones. The quirkless assessment and the battle trials afterwards are also largely the same, minus Izuku using One For All in the battle trials, and this also adds in that Aizawa is a bit more aware that there is something wrong with the relationship between Izuku and Bakugo, but he doesn't have a lot of concrete evidence to support any actions that he can actively take. So the school still does get broken into, and for the USJ, it's still the same, except Izuku resonates more with Tomura's monologue he has about Hero Society and what really makes a difference between a hero and a villain. And when Tomura almost disintegrates Sue. Instead of trying to power punch him, that was the phrase, he instead either grabs his wrists or just smacks his hands away, which kind of just surprises Tomura. The sports festival also doesn't change much, except that Izuku just doesn't use One for All during the whole thing. Afterwards, at the internships, when he finally gets to learn how to use One for All from Gran Torino, the stain incident also remains largely the same. The final exams change in how Izuku processes All Might's brutality and lack of understanding on how to train, and finally blows up at Bakugo, saying that he wants nothing to do with him anymore and that he is just done being the doormat to Bakugo's ginormous ego. After that, Aizawa is finally able to kick Bakugo from his class, is only really allowed to kick him to 1B, and they swap with Monoma. The mall scene also happens largely the same, just with Izuku empathizing more with Tomura, and Tomura still gets to have his epiphany at the end. The only change that really happens during the training camp arc is that after breaking his arms in the fight against Muscular, he ends up breaking his leg, jumping into the portal trying to save Bakugo. Then, while Izuku is kidnapped by the League of Villains, and they don't know what to do with him, All for One chimes in that he definitely has an idea and decides to take him so they can have a bit of a one-on-one conversation. First, of course, he has to wake Izuku up and heal him of his wounds, so he decides to give him a temporary regeneration quirk and has him heal up, and before he can take it back, it kind of merges with One for All, and he can't take that back by force. So, this is where some lore comes in. In the conversation that All for One has with Izuku, he explains that Izuku, as a quirkless person, did not develop the necessary fail-safes to accommodate to the quirk he was given. And giving him the regeneration quirk now is allowing Izuku to feel the way that One for All has been slowly and subtly destroying him inside. And the regeneration quirk is kind of trying to change him internally to accommodate it, but it's not going to work, and he can just feel all of the pain. When All for One offers to take the quirk from Izuku, and Izuku just has to give him permission and willingly give it to him, Izuku, of course, has already been told all of the big scary stories about him and wants to refuse, in which case All for One instead is like, how about I just tell you how we've gotten here today with One for All, and explains to Izuku the story of him and his brother. This story differs in the sense that All for One at the very beginning of the quirk era was someone who could take powers and give them, and he would make money to support him and his brother by taking powers from people who didn't want them. And it eventually amassed a great amount, and he even made money giving people abilities and or swapping people's abilities, and it did culminate in him wanting to help his sick brother by giving him an ability that would make him stronger. And later, finding out exactly how All for One found out that it wasn't going to kill his brother kind of leads into a falling out that has his One for All, his first user, running away to go and live on his own and be his own person. He makes a friend, they both live on separately, but after a while, One for All kind of was like, you know what, I understand that, in the situation, his brother was trying his best, and he wants to reconcile, and they do, and then when One for All is at the end of his life, and far away from his brother, he tells his friend, hey, I'm going to give you my quirk, and when you see my brother, if you want to, if you can, and are willing, why don't you give it back to him so he has a piece of me with him? And his friend agrees, and then All for One goes out and finds them, or finds the second user, and is like, hey, I'd like my brother's quirk back. And he's like, I can't give it to you right now because I kind of want to have a piece of him with me because we were really close. And he's like, okay, fine. When you're done with it, or when you've gotten your closure or whatever, call me, or I'll come find you when you're like older and, you know, close to death, and I'll get the quirk back. And the guy's like, cool, we'll do that. Then it comes to him dying early in a fight, and he gives his friend the quirk, and he's like, hey, before I die, there's going to be a person called All For One who wants this quirk. And before he can explain any further than that, he passes away, and the third user is like, this is kind of concerning, but okay, I'll wait to see what happens. Then All For One finds out, goes and searches out the third user, and is like, all right, give me that back, please. And he's like, I'm kind of concerned about what this means. I don't think I want to give it to you. And then All For One's like, look, I was nice the first time. I'm not nice this time. And he tries to forcefully take it away, and he scares the third user, and then starts the big game of keep away for the next few generations, in which All For One, instead of continuously trying to search them out, also tries to like lure them in as the story gets twisted. Each generation it's given to a new person, up until like he's kind of built himself up as a big scary villain to them to fight and to destroy. And it does have some bad little side effects in the fact that he kind of intentionally is responsible for Nana's death, and then All Might becoming like a huge, big, angry, mad person, and then their, you know, fight to the death, which All For One was 100% willing to concede that if they both died, he was just done. He was just, if All Might died, he would die too, because like the one thing he wanted, he can't have anymore. But then All Might is still alive, and he's like, okay, I need a new plan on how to get this quirk back, which leads him to this conversation with Izuku, and he's like, look, this is already killing you because you were quirkless. I can take it away now if you give me permission. And Izuku, having the realization, oh, I can't be a hero if I'm dead, and he has All For One agree that he won't do any more villainy or bad things and will retire if he willingly gives him One For All, which All For One agrees to, and Izuku willingly gives it up. So now newly quirkless, the Camino Ward incident still happens, pretty much the same. All Might and Heroes come to save Bakugo and Izuku. There's a big fight between All Might and All For One, where All For One is largely like phoning it in to give like a good performance, and also so he can like force All Might into revealing to the public that he's like very weak and can't be a hero anymore. And all League of Villains still gets away, and so do Bakugo and Midoriya with the group that snuck out to go and save them. Now newly quirkless, and in the period where they're moving into dorms, Izuku gets rid of a lot of his All Might merch because he's got a new perspective on the man, and he can't see him as this great and perfect hero. He just sees him as a person, and a very flawed one at that. He changes up his room to be largely more relaxing and cute because now he has to stress over not letting anyone know that he doesn't have a quirk anymore. While getting ready for the hero license exam, he works a lot more with Hatsune Miku, developing more subtle support items so that he can continue not letting on to anybody that he doesn't have a quirk anymore. And the hero licensing exam goes largely the same, mainly differing in that Izuku actually has knowledge on how to act in like emergency situations. Like he has like somewhat of an EMT training type thing, because if he wanted to be a rescue hero his whole life, I imagine he probably did go through those sorts of classes to prepare himself. After this point is where my knowledge of what's going on in both the anime and the manga starts to kind of deteriorate. I know he gets in a fight with Bakugo after the licensing exam because Bakugo really needs therapy and doesn't know how to leave the poor kid alone. In this case, Izuku puts his foot down more about, I don't want anything to do with you, and Bakugo still like forces him into a fight, and Bakugo gets in more trouble and is threatened with being completely demoted to general studies. I know after this there was a mock fight between the Class 1A and the Big Three, which they all lose, and then after this is the hero internships and the overhaul arc, in which case Izuku still goes to Night Eye because again he doesn't want to All Might or anyone else to find out he doesn't have the quirk anymore, but Night Eye kind of pisses him off with his snide comments about how Mirio should have been the one with the quirk, and he leaves and still ends up running into Eri, and in his moment of like trying to console a scared child, he insinuates or even lets slip that he is quirkless, and Overhaul just happens to hear it and is like, ah yes, an uncorrupted youth, I'm gonna steal that. So then Izuku just gets kidnapped. And at this point forward is where I would completely disregard as what has happened right now in My Hero Academia, because while he's kidnapped, he's going to have more time to get to know a lot about Eri, and he's also going to have time to actually have a conversation with like Twice and Toga and empathize with them, and then he's going to be saved by Tomura, and he's probably going to end up with Eri as well, still going with them, and then he's just gonna end up like rolling around with the LOV because like he agrees with them, and he also thinks like that logically like you could do an angle where he is trying to better society and help the villains from the hero side, but I think it'd be more interesting to have him be like on the edge of being a hero and being a villain, because he agrees with them and he's trying to like rein in their chaos, but also like he can't like side with hero society very much anymore. It'd be like really fun to explore this in the story, and it could go like lots of different ways. Obviously I'm saying this all in a video and I only drew a picture, which means I don't have any writing ability, and if anyone ends up watching this and is like, hey, this is kind of a cool idea for a fan fiction, you have my full permission to write it. Just, tell me that you're writing it and link me to it so that I may read it. So I can then gush over someone seeing my ideas into fruition. And it can go so many ways. You can even add shipping to it. Largely wouldn't care who you ship him with as long as it wasn't Bakudeku. If you do Bakudeku, you will have me as your enemy. I don't think I can express it enough how much I do not like Bakugo, and I really wish I didn't have to deal with him as a character in the story, which I already found interesting, but the longer he's in it and the less he actually has any real changes, the less fun it became for me to read and engage in. So anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the drawing. I hope you enjoyed my mad rambling. And we'll see each other again sometime in the future, probably.